Hello everybody, I am not dead yet, and that is probably because I haven't yet trained with Larry Wheels. For those of you that do not know, Larry Wheels is kind of sort of being heralded as this angel of death in the fitness community because it seems like anybody who trains with him winds up with an injury. In fact, Larry Wheels recently put out a video titled The Curse of Larry Wheels that kind of highlights all the various influencers that have been injured training with Larry over the past year or so, and some of these injuries are pretty bad. We have the famous Ryan Crowley pec tear, the guy that dropped like 400 or 500 pounds directly on his chest, the guy that almost dropped a bar on his neck, Joe Linder tweaking his back, Noel Diesel almost tearing his bicep, etc., etc. Looks like they were living like Larry and paid the price for it.
By living like Larry.
Living like Larry.
Living like Larry!
A few moments later.
But obviously everybody knows it's not Larry Wheels' fault, and I kind of wanted to make a video to kind of highlight my thoughts on what is the true cause of all of these injuries. And I did make an Instagram post about this, but I honestly think it's a subject that merits its own video. Ego lifting. Actually, and it's not just ego lifting, but more specifically ego training, to make this a little bit more broad here. Because I think it goes to show that even some of the strongest people in the fitness space, because let's not kid ourselves here, a lot of the people that wound up with these injuries are incredibly strong and athletic people. It shows that even some of the genetic elite and some of the strongest aren't immune to ego lifting. Now, what is ego lifting? Ego lifting is trying to lift too much weight than you can handle in order to boost your ego, hence the name. And normally that involves, using crappy form and a lot of momentum to get weight up, etc., and it does lead to injury. But why does it happen more with Larry Wheels than with anybody else? Well, it's because of Larry Wheels' reputation, and that's not his fault, but Larry Wheels is an incredibly strong person, and so anybody who trains with him obviously naturally want to keep up with him. They want to be like, oh, I was able to hang and lift with Larry Wheels and I kept up with him. That's a brag, to be frank. And so they push themselves more than they should, even though a lot of these people who have been lifting for a long time and are seasoned lifters who should know their limits, they push them for the sake of being able to say, hey, I am as strong as, or I was able to keep up with Larry Wheels. And that is where the ego comes in. For example, Noel Diesel is a great example because, again, he is a seasoned bodybuilder who has been lifting for years, who knew his body. He talked about how he had previously torn his bicep there and how he was missing out on sleep and how he hadn't done the front squat in a while, and yet he pushed his limits anyway because he was training with Larry Wheels. He even said it. It's like you're training with Larry Wheels, you get the adrenaline boost, you get excited. Now, ironically, the ironic thing about this is that had they had just known their limits and stayed within them, or at least pushed them safely and carefully, they would have looked infinitely more impressive than they would have trying to handle a weight that they couldn't have and ultimately failing it. I think ultimately trying to lift more than you're capable and failing makes you look way more stupid and way worse than you would have if you would have said, listen, I am not ready for that weight for whatever reason. You could even give an excuse. Listen, I'm really tired today. Things just aren't feeling right. I probably could do that another time, but today I am staying well within my limits. Honestly speaking, I think that is more impressive than pushing yourself to lift more weight than you can with shitty form or injuring yourself. Ironically, if you injure yourself, you end up looking even more stupid. There's a great analogy that I use when I'm in a rush to get somewhere, and it's always that if you speed and crash, you will always arrive later than had you stayed within the speed limit and just drove there safely. And I think that's the general it's the same general idea I take towards training with these things. Sure, you want to look impressive, sure, but you look way less impressive when you try to do something you can't and injure yourself. And I want to extend this more to all types of training, because ego lifting is not something, it's not just something that happens to lifters, which is why I prefer the term ego training. As a boxer, there are many different times where I've seen this, especially to new people in sparring. I've had a lot of people who say things like, oh, I can handle your power, give it to me 100%, let's go. And then I take it up to like 50%, and then they say, dude, you were hitting like a truck, and I'm like, yeah, and if I swung full force, I'd be hitting with the strength of a steamroller. And then they end up getting the absolute shit beaten out of them, and they impress no one. I think it's actually more impressive for someone to step in and say, hey, listen, like, I'm new, can we take it easy? I just want to practice my skills. That, to me, shows more potential as a fighter than let's get in there and beat the shit out of each other, because the guy who says, hey, let's take it easy, I want to practice, shows that he is more focused on developing his skills and his ring IQ as opposed to proving how tough he is. There will be millions of opportunities to show how tough you are. Show that you're willing to put in the work, and that you're willing to get smarter, and that you know your limits. That, to me, is more impressive. Another one is a drill called 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, and it's a variation. Sometimes it's 10 seconds, sometimes it's a minute, where you basically just stand, you're at a bag, and you like this for a minute, and you have a heavy bag going. And oftentimes, especially when it's a minute long, you get people who are super excited, and they're like, all out, right off the hop, and they think it's impressive. Oh, this drill's easy, it's only a minute, I'll go all out as fast as I can. And then they hit about the 20-second mark, and then at that point you see them you see the speed start to kind of slow. And then by the, when you get to the 40 to 50-second mark, they're really pushing it because the lactic acid is built up, and they don't know how to pace themselves. And any experienced boxer, when they see that, when they do this drill, we always kind of smile and go, yep, that's usually how it goes for people who are inexperienced. Because they think that going all out, gunning it right from the get-go is the way to do it, when in reality, what impresses us more in that drill is someone who has the ability to pace themselves, to do a moderate pace or a moderately high pace for the first 50 minutes and then gun it for the last 10, right? But people want to show off, and so they try to be flashy. It's, if you can't impress them with, what's the saying? If you can't impress them with your knowledge, baffle them with your bullshit. It's basically that. But see, here's the thing, there's no shame in that, because we all do it. And then again, like, I've seen other things as well, where it's like runners trying to keep up with people who are way too fast and end up gassing themselves out at the very start of the run, so they end up running way slower than they would have had they simply paced themselves. Same thing with sprinters pulling hamstrings and stuff. And while it is good to push yourself, again, there's a limit to what you can do. There's a difference between pushing yourself and then needlessly going over your limits that'll lead to injury. There's a difference between ego training and pushing yourself. The main thing I want people to take away from this video is that, one, don't ego train. Check your ego at the door. Admit that some people may be stronger than you, some people may be faster than you, some people may have a better reaction time, they may be more skilled. That is okay. That's a-okay. And in fact, it is more impressive to admit that and know your limits than it is to try and needlessly push yourself to the point of injury. It's okay to push yourself to try and keep up, but it's more impressive to know your limits and stay within that, to say, listen, you're just faster than me, I'm not going to pull a hamstring trying to keep up with you, or you're just faster than me in the long haul, so I'll keep up with you for as long as I can, but if I start to slow down or I can't keep up your pace, keep going, we'll see each other at the end of it. Or, listen, like, you're really strong, but I can't lift that weight, I don't want to injure myself, I will stop here. I think Johnny Shreve was the one who coined the phrase, match your partner in intensity, not in weight. And it's the exact same thing with any drill. Match them in intensity, not in speed. Match them in distance, not in, speed, again, I guess. Or match them in, and especially when it comes to sparring, match your partner in intensity. Or even know when to take it back. Listen, you're going too hard on me, I can't take this. Please take your power down and work with me. That is a-okay. And I want to encourage that. But the secondary thing that I also want people to take away from this video is that if you do let it happen to you, if you do ego train, don't beat yourself up over it, because it happens to the best of us. I'm not going to pretend like I haven't taken needless damage in a hard sparring session because someone get cranked to my neck. We were sparring, boom, my neck goes flying 180 degrees like an owl, and I say, okay, you want to play... Whoa, almost spit out my teeth. You want to play that way? Let's play that way. And so, yeah, like, I understand, because we all have ego. All athletes have ego. And I think that whole Curse of Larry Wheels video is not only a cautionary tale, but also a little bit reassuring because it happens to the best of us. Like I said, Noel Diesel is an accomplished bodybuilder. He's well decorated. He's a veteran. He knows his body. He knows what he's doing. And yet he still fell victim to it. So it's a reminder to not beat yourself up over ego training, but also don't ego train whenever possible. It's bound to happen. We all do it because we're human and we have flaws, but try to minimize it. If we go back to that driving analogy, you will probably be in an accident at some point in your life, and at some point in your life, it will probably be your fault, whether it's major or minor. Maybe you were backing up and you simply weren't bad at gauging distance and you backed into a pole, or you drove through a four-way intersection and ran over a child. You know, that'd be the equivalent of like, oh, I pulled a muscle versus I tore my pec right off the bone, right? But at the end of the day, we all make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up over it, but we want to be conscious about that and do our best to minimize the risk as much as possible. And I also want people to know that it's actually more impressive to know your limits and know when to say when than it is trying to push yourself far beyond your limits to the point of getting injured. So there's no shame in saying, hey, that's too heavy for me. In fact, the ability to say that, the ability to know yourself and check your ego at the door is something that is incredibly impressive for most people and should, at least in my opinion, be knowledge. I was going to say will, but we don't know. It should be acknowledged. But anyway, that is really all I have to say for this matter. Big shout out to everyone who supports me on Patreon. I would not be able to do what I do without you, as well as Ethan Harold, who I know will be editing this video. So thank you, Ethan. Wouldn't be able to, you're helping me a lot. And, go check him out. He'll be in the description and all that. If you want to support me, my links and everything you can do to support me will also be in the description. But until next time, remember, only the strong subscribe. I am not dead yet. And if you are not either, there is always a tomorrow waiting for you.